You know, guys, not to go all My Little Pony or Care Bears on you guys, but I really do value my friends. It's not easy for me to make friends sometimes, especially when I was growing up. I was that kid who was awkward and always bullied and had a lot of trouble socializing. In fact, my parents were worried about me for a long time. So when I finally do make friends, or when I finally got out of my, little bubble of isolation, I always make a point to show how much I appreciate the friends I make. Not only do my friends stick up for me and I stick up for them, but quite often some of the greatest inspirations and stories that I make often are the result of the relationships I have. And the one I want to talk about today is a story that was created through me and one of my best buddies, Jay. I talk about Jay all the time in my update videos. I always mention him and show off his art, and I'm sure I've mentioned this story we've created together plenty of times before. It's called Nomad. Now, one thing that I want to make clear about Nomad before we go any further is how it started. I want to tell you guys how this story kind of came to be. So I was talking with Jay, and he asked me a favor. He said, "Hey man, take a look at this picture." So he sent me a picture that he drew. He said, "I drew this a long time ago. No real idea behind it, just kind of had this inspiration. I wanted to try drawing this picture. What do you think?" Looked at it, said, "Looks really cool." He said, "Do you think you could make a story out of this character? No context, nothing. I don't have any ideas. Just can you make a story out of this character?" And I said, "Okay, I can try. Give me a few days. I need to think on it." He said, "Sure, no problem." So I thought about it. Finally, I wrote a short story called Nomad and just went from there. Now, I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of the story. But Jay absolutely loved it. And he said, "Dude, man, hey, loved what you wrote. I actually drew this." And he sent me a new picture. He said, "I was thinking this could kind of be an enemy or adversary of Nomad in like another story. Do you think you could write that?" And I said, "Yeah, man, sure." So I wrote a sequel, and he fell in love with that story. He said, "Hey, man, I hate to ask, but you think we could kind of turn this into a series, man?" And I said, "As long as you can keep giving pictures to help keep me inspired, yeah." And so it became kind of a dynamic duo kind of thing. He would come up with a new enemy or foe for Nomad to fight. I'd come up with a story about how Nomad fought that foe. But there was more to the story than that. It was really strange. We created this world around Nomad and these enemies for him to fight. But at the same time, it was still telling kind of Christian stories. The funny thing is, Jay and I are both Christians, so our faith comes out a lot in our work sometimes. And here, we didn't mind that one bit. The story of Nomad kind of reflects almost a combination of the story of Elijah, of Moses, of David. We tried to embody a lot of different things and Christian ideals into Nomad, right down to the villains he fights. The villains often being representatives or representations of sin or struggles or conflicts that Christians would have to go through. And so basically, for those who were kind of worried, because they're like, well, what kind of story is this, Raven? Well, Nomad's pretty simple. You have this fantasy world, totally divorced from our own, where, think of it as pre-modern. There are no guns yet. And Nomad is this wandering vagabond who is also what's known as a shaman. Now, in this world, there are spirits, and those few humans who commune with a spirit are known as shamans. Think of them like in Dungeons and Dragons terminology, kind of like something like a warlock or a cleric. Someone who communes with a higher power, and that higher power gives them the ability to do things, but for a price, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where we're looking at it here. Nomad would definitely fall more in the lines of a cleric, though, and very much a warrior, and he serves a spirit known as the One. That's all he's known as, the One. Now, the idea is that when a shaman makes a deal or pact with their spirit, the spirit gives them their power, but in exchange for something. Nomad gave up his name, because he's given his full identity and sense of self to the One. And obviously the One is supposed to be an analogy for God here, supposed to represent God, whereas Nomad represents a Christian or Elijah or some kind of follower of God. As Nomad goes through his journey, his goal is to vanquish and destroy the various shamans who are oppressing the people of the land. And he'll come across different shamans who embody different sins. Like there's a woman shaman who is very much lustful. She corrupts men and women with her lustful sexual deviousness. And not only does Nomad have to fight her, but have to overcome his own lustful desires when he meets her. He has to overcome that difficulty. He also meets one who represents Wrath, who actually killed his brother in the war predating the story, and he has to overcome his own sense of anger and self-righteousness when dealing with this guy. Like, there's different areas that we can explore, like different Christian themes when following Nomad. And of course, Jay's art really helped in the establishment and building and going forward of the story. I very much enjoyed working on it, and I really hope Jay enjoyed working on it with me. One thing that we had a lot of fun with is Jay ended up creating a second character who ended up becoming Nomad's apprentice or disciple, and she follows Nomad around, and when Nomad, and Nomad's goal is to eventually have her replace him, which I'm not going to spoil the whole story for you guys will need to hear it for yourselves, but we just had so much fun making this story, and Jay drew some awesome comic art, some awesome pictures. He just went all out with this. Now, as I always do in these story sharing videos, I want to tell you guys what I love about the story and what I don't like about the story. What I love about the story is pretty clear. It has great Christian themes and messages, and I really enjoyed putting those in there. Nomad himself was a very easy character to write. He's very much the paragon archetype. He's going to try to do what's right regardless of everything. What I think I enjoyed writing about him were his weaknesses, were his areas of struggle, which definitely made things more fun because I could relate to some of them, like definitely some of the struggles that Nomad has, I have had, or understand those struggles. So it's definitely something that I could appreciate. I also like creating various new characters for Nomad to interact with, like these villains. Creating unique enemies that reflect different sins and obstacles was very fun. I had a great time kind of establishing and building up these characters who very much acted like demon-possessed individuals. It was really neat. But I will say, if I were to criticize myself in the story at all, I think that one of the problems I had was because it was basically Jay making new images and then me creating stories around those images, I didn't give a lot of thought to how I would end it. I did in the story. We did finally wrap it up, and Jay still has to draw that last picture. Jay, if you're watching, hey, come on, bro. But I did wrap it up, but I feel like I could have done better in the wrap-up. I could have done better with Lisha, who was the disciple of Nomad. And I feel like I could have gone further with her. I could have established more of her character. I could have put her on more adventures or struggles or paths that she has to walk. I could have done more. I also could have explored her and the relationship with her and Nomad a bit more. I think there were things I could have done that would have made the story a bit more fleshed out. I think I tried to rush it at certain points because one of the problems with creating a story built around just art and not personal inspiration is you're limited by what the art reveals to you. So if I see an image as great as it is and think, okay, I'm going to build a story around this image, eventually something has to come from you. You have to put something of yourself into that story. And I think I relied a bit too much on Jay at times. Not that I'm upset with Jay or anything, I'm more upset with myself because I feel like what I needed to do more often than not was create a story or create a chapter around Nomad and then say, hey Jay, here's what I came up with. Do you think we can do an art piece around this? And granted, sometimes that did happen. I remember with the with one of the characters, I ended up kind of leading in a new direction, which Jay followed and edited his image to say, hold on, I like what you did there, let me fix the image just a little bit to suit that. So that does happen from time to time, but more often than not, I just kind of said, okay, here's what Jay drew, here's what I'm gonna write. And I feel like I could have been more creative, and that would have helped the story a whole lot more. Again, not to say that I dislike the story in any regard. I really enjoyed working on Nomad, and if you enjoyed any of what you've heard, I may read Nomad audibly in one of my Ravens reading streams, or you can go and check it out on the DeviantArt website where I post a lot of my old stories. You can go check it out there. But that's pretty much Nomad, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.